Good morning, everybody. My name is Jerry Papadakis, and I'd like to thank you all for participating in our webinar, RevOps Insights, Essential RevOps Strategies for FY25 Success. Today, we're going to be sharing some actionable insights on revenue operations best practices. But first, a quick intro on myself. I've been a go-to-market strategist for nearly 20 years, working with over a dozen startups to facilitate their growth by identifying their ideal customer profiles and helping them with their lead generation processes. When I crossed paths with OperateWise, we formed a fusion between sales and marketing strategies and operational efficiencies for revenue operations. So today we formed a modern and holistic RevOps consulting and engineering practice. So we're a small enough group today to make this interactive, and we have a little QA chat button on the bottom of your screen. You could submit your questions there, and we have allotted 20 minutes for a Q&A session so we can answer all your questions. Our speakers today are going to be our founder, Alexander Kurian, and Jeremy Lalonde, who leads our RevOps advisory services. Now I'm going to hand it off to Alex, who will walk you through what our mission is and our service approach. Alex?
Thank you, Jerry. Welcome to the webinar. Just want to give a quick intro about myself. I am Alexander Kurian, founder of OperateWise. We are a boutique revenue operation services firm based out in New Jersey. Just to give a background about my career, I started as a software engineer, moved up the ranks, streamlined a lot of the different processes in engineering side of it. In 2013, I had an opportunity to work for a small firm based out in New York, and they were solving a rental car problem, tolling problem, and I had an opportunity to set up the entire tech stack from lead to cash with few thousand cars, and in 4 years we scaled that business to 4 million cars. So right now, if you go to any rental car companies in North America, all your tolling program is handled by the system that I built. So that was a great experience, taking the engineering side, the software side, process side, the marketing, sales, tech, operation side of it. In 2018, I had an opportunity to, exit the company, and we went IPO and exit the company. Since then, I moved my career from a tech side to a venture capital firm where we invest in small size, lower mid-market companies and help them accelerate their growth. So I work with the CEOs and founders, the revenue leaders, to put a cross-functional team, look for opportunities, and see how we can help them to identify opportunities to fix some of their revenue operation leaks. And we added tremendous value in some of our portfolio companies. That's a superpower that I got acquired in since 2018 to 2002, 4 years. I am on a mission right now to help a lot of the founders and revenue leaders with their revenue operation challenges. I know these days revenue leaders have tremendous pressure. They have to scale the company, they have to optimize their operation, all the aspects, and there are tons of job that needs to be get done. And they have cash tight, they have resource challenges, like they don't have too much cash to spend on hiring full-time resources, and also the time. And cash is king also, right? So I put together a go-to-market approach of OperateWise, where our mission is to help founders to achieve their revenue goals, and also to make sure that the financial and career goals are met. We want to de-risk their business revenue opportunities and make sure that they achieve their goals in a very methodical way. I'm partnering with Jeremy, who is one of the superstars in the revenue operations world. He's very well respected um, in this field. Jeremy is the backbone. He was the backbone, and he's right now the backbone for so many CROs who look great and execute their revenue operations. You can look up in his profile. He was great companies and scale companies from small startup to $100 million by fixing the foundational, so building those foundational things. So we bring in, so our firm, our mission, as I mentioned, our firm is to make sure that we add value, tremendous value to your organization by streamlining, looking at the tech process, strategy, even the soft side of it, the cultural side, the things that the frictions that are happening in your revenue engine. And we fine tune it, and we are operators. We work in partnership with the revenue leaders, dig into the details, and enable and enhance your existing team to the next level. So that is the thing. So that's what we do, and that's our core competency. In terms of our approach, we have a very simple mechanism of a quick audit, working with the leaders, looking at their revenue operation health by answering 10 questions. So it's an exercise that is going to be done along with Jeremy, and you will get a personalized report, very confidential. We will not share the data with anyone. We know some of the data that we are going to ask is very confidential to the company, but we will take care of that very seriously, and we will give you a report. It's like going to a doctor's office, right? You get a blood work run. Same thing. So we do that very quickly. We don't want to waste anyone's time, and we make sure that you have any opportunities that we can add value to you. And if there is anything, we will work with you and make quick wins faster. So that is right. It's not like coming and disrupting things. We are fast learners. We know the business. We have seen so many things get that can go wrong. We bring accelerators, frameworks, best practices, lean engineering aspects, AI tools. Some of the tools are stepping up their game, but there are overlapping functionality. So all those aspects, we take care of it and get all your revenue operations jobs done efficiently and fast and cost effectively at a fraction of a cost. And we bring that owner's mindset to the table. With that, I wanted to hand over to Jeremy. We want to, as we said, right, we want to share the knowledge and experience with our revenue leaders. And we want to share some of the things that we are seeing in the clients that we are working right now. So, Jeremy, take it away.
Thanks, Alexander. I feel like you already set me up, so I'll make a quick intro, and we have a lot to dive in today. So, my name is Jeremy Lamonde. I've been running revenue operation for now 15 plus years across a different sales motion from B2B to B2C, but also across like many different segments from the SMB, mid-market, enterprise, and strategic segments. I've worked with many CEOs, CROs. I think at this point, I'm close to like over a dozen that I work with. And I think one thing that I've learned over the years is that everyone wants to grow faster. And that's kind of like where we come in, where we can kind of like, as Alexander pointed out, where we can identify the biggest opportunities with your revenue engine. And that's actually how we move the needle, as opposed to kind of keeping the lights on. So today we'll go over what you can do as a leader to set your team up for success going in 2025. So this is what you expect as part of the agenda. This is the framework. The reason why we kind of build it this way is because there needs to have kind of like a sequence of events in order for you to kind of like have the right go-to-market strategies and the right setup for like 2025. So we'll talk about forecasting, what comes into like forecasting, and the alignment that needs to happen across your teams. We'll go over the KPIs, which is really important. This is where, again, a lot of folks may not think enough around those KPIs. So we'll really dive into this. Then after, when you have kind of like the forecast and the KPIs, you really want to kind of build a team on the ground. So this is kind of where we have the territory management and the headcount planning to get the team structure to allow to execute on the ground. And then we'll talk about, now that you have the team, like how does it tie to the sales incentives plan to match essentially like the go-to-market strategy that you have. And then we have kind of like a bonus section at the end, which is like what we call like the proactive insights, which the reason why we put it in there is we've done like many assessments in the past, and we've seen so many different companies, but the ones that are operating at the highest level have these proactive insights. And so we'll talk about this. All right, so this is quite important. The first one is like forecasting going into like FY25. There is a lot that can go into this, so I'm gonna try to stay kind of high level. But I put it into like 3 different like categories here. One is, how do you analyze your current funnel and life cycle by segment? That's kind of like one piece that's super important. The second one is the cross-functional alignment. This is something that I see all the time, where leaders are not necessarily on the same page around how we're going to drive it, right? Like, is this going to be marketing kind of like driving this? Is it going to be the SDR team? And as you know, the SDR team is getting more and more challenged these days. Or is it going to be like AEs sourced? And then we'll talk about pipeline creation. So first is, what does your funnel look like? Like, have you analyzed every single like pipeline, but not just kind of like the total pipeline, but also per reps? Because I think that's important, right? When you think about it, sometimes there are some rock stars, and then there are like kind of like below average. So like, you don't necessarily want to just do the aggregate. You also want to see like from like the performance at the rep level, and really thinking about the stages that you have, right? Like, do those still matter? Because that's one of the things as well that we see so often, right? It's like you set those stages, but the stages were set like 2 or 3 years ago and you haven't touched them. Are they still relevant today, right? Your motion is probably evolved over the years, right? Do you still need like stage 5 or like whatever you're saying at stage 5? Maybe it's a quote send, or maybe it's, you know, there's so many different stages, but usually you get those 5, 6 stages. Like, do you have the right stages? That's something that we look into it. We also look into thinking about the conversion, right? Like, how are those opportunities being created in the first place? Are those relevant, right? There's a lot of like, and it goes back to kind of like the alignment between marketing and sales around like marketing driving a lot of like SQL. And then what are some of the incentives between SQL to SQO, self-qualified opportunity, right? So like, those things really matters, because you don't want to kind of like overinflate your pipeline, because what usually happen is that now you have an open pipe that looks really good on paper, but the conversions get crushed after like kind of like the stage 2, because they don't move forward. So really kind of like being very thoughtful around the stages that you have and how the entry criteria for all the stages. That's not something that we see often, right? So like, because it's usually not standardized, you don't see that on the ops. And that's something that we look into and make sure there's a process around that. So that's kind of like one piece. When you have the stages, when you know the conversions per reps, then you can start really building kind of like a better forecast, just overall. Then the second piece, go ahead.
So Jeremy, I have a question, in that area where, if you change some of those life cycle, over a period of time as company grows, that's where the challenge there, right? Some of the data they were tracking were in a different life cycle. And if you have a new life cycle needs to be, or a step needs to be added or needs to be removed. So that needs to be changed, and that needs to be synced with the data side of it, right? And make sure that it's synced. There are some challenges coming up in that area as well, right?
It's a great call. And I'll give you an example. Like, recently I was working with a client where their kind of like the ramp up period was like super long for certain segments, super long, because the expectation was the life cycle was like super long. And I actually went through the math and I looked into all of our closed won opportunities within that segment, and it was much shorter. And so folks were still like from like 2 or 3 years ago, where that was the expected life cycle, and didn't realize that it was much faster now. So when you were thinking about like even setting the compensation, they were giving them like 6 to 9 months of like ramp up, where it was probably close to 3 months required, right? All of those things matters, right? Because you want to bring urgency. And that's usually kind of like where revenue operation comes in, because they can see like the whole 360, not just being stuck on like one piece of the life cycle, but how does it impact cash flows? How does it impact kind of like your forecast? How does it impact your ramp? How does it impact your goals? All of those things. Thanks for bringing it up.
Thanks, Jeremy.
The other piece is what metrics do you want to drive? And I think this is kind of like a very, it sounds like an easy topic to have, but for the most part, what I've seen is that folks don't necessarily pick the right metrics to work on. And I think for the most part, it's no one's fault. I think most of the companies that we work with, they move really, really fast. There's always kind of like a new shiny objects coming in. We want to try the new things, right? But what we've seen in terms of like best in class is folks that have been able to kind of like, and we'll talk about like kind of like being like disciplined and like trying to stick with like a few metrics, but like really understanding what is going to drive the business, right? So it could be conversion, it could be like life cycle, but really think about ones that are actually moving the needle. And I think that's really, really important, because sometimes I see like some of the metrics and they're like sub metrics, and it's like, how is that gonna tie to your goal for like next year? Like if you do this well, how much more incremental money are you gonna get, right? That's very important. So like really understanding like those metrics are gonna be the ones driving the most improvement. So that's another piece. And the last piece is the pipeline creation. Right, pipeline creation is for us like it's an issue for everybody these days. You know, not just like enterprise, like even SMBs, right? Like SMBs used to be able to create pipe by just like sending emails. Now they can't do that because none of those emails are going through the inbox and they don't get any response. Calls are not being answered, and so, or they are being answered, but it's just like the connected rate is like half or a third of what it used to be. So the motion is like much harder. So really think about like kind of a little bit about like the team structure there as well. We'll talk a little more later, but here's an example around like your AEs. Are they working on too many things at once? Something we see all the time. Again, no one's fault. Companies are coming in. There is no SDR. There is no CS team. There is only like a couple of sellers, right? And as they grow, the sellers keep the same responsibilities, which is to own new business, but also own like renewals. You have at some point to move away from that model, right? And take some risk around like, my AEs are responsible for like new business, right? That's how you bring a very high sales productivity to your team, right? You can't have a high sales productivity if folks are doing too many things at once. So that's just kind of like a point that everyone should be paying attention. Too easy to fall through this. And some of the other things are like, have you aligned with departments on the milestone? I think that's also alignment is super important, right? And the last piece here is the lag that it takes, right? So forecast is really understanding kind of like the funnel conversion to make sure you have the right stage, the right entry criteria, you understand the life cycle and so on. But also you want to understand like how much new pipe creation you need to create in order to get to your FY25. So it's true. Sometimes you'll tell me like, oh, my life cycle is like 9 months. Okay, well, 9 months. But that means that in Q1, you have to take into consideration how much pipe creations you're going to create in Q1, because that's going to hit by FY25. So just another kind of like reminder around like thinking about the forecast, open pipe, new pipe creation, and everything in between.
Right. So I would like to add one more point here is, right, in terms of a lot of the new changes or things happening in the tech side of it, AI side of it coming into play. We will be, helping with some of these clients with, prototyping it, testing it out, making sure that that's working and making sure that we have some early adopters to see how it is working, and then we will roll out to some of our clients. So that's as aspect also we need to take into account. Can we go to the next slide?
Cool. Let's do it.
Thank you.
All right. So KPIs and setting measurable goals for sustainable growth. I'll start with the first one because it's a trap that I believe 80 to 90% of the companies that I've been part of are doing today, which is we're looking to last year's goals and we'll add a 30% growth. Depending on where you are, how many years you've been in business, what's your growth year over year, that's usually kind of like the CFO's hat comes in and we're going to add like 30%. And I want to talk about the impact of this, right? If you don't do it really well, and this is also where revenue operation needs to have a better role. And I think that's a bit of kind of like the balance of revenue operation, right? Between kind of like supporting the revenue engine under the CRO, you got the CFO/CEO kind of like setting the goals for like next year, and CRO that, no offense, right? But I think we're on the wrong screen here.
Sorry, guys.
Okay. And I think the CRO wants to play like be a team player, right? and really want to kind of like get to those goals. But the issue is like if you set those goals too high, which is you probably have seen some of those numbers over the past 2 years where A's attainment used to be kind of like as a team like around like 60% attainment, very healthy. And we'll talk more about like those performance that has dropped from 60% to 40%. So if you set goals too high, you're probably going to have a sales team that is achieving as a whole 40%. And so what I've seen happening over and over is that obviously the morale goes down. Your rock stars are leaving the company. And now you're replacing your rock stars. And you expect that you'll get the same result as what they did, but you don't. Rock stars were there. They knew the product from the get-go. They were just like ingrained into the culture. They were just like very good at what they were doing. And those new AEs are just not going to perform the same level. And so now you realize that you lost your rock star. You need to backfill them, which takes time and money. And those new AEs are not performing the same level. So now like the overall attainment is lower. And you keep going through this like this almost like infinite loop around replacing and ramp up and goals not achieving and so on. So if there's one thing here where revenue operation can really help is sit between the CRO and the CFO/CEO and really ensure that you can hit those goals. It's not just a top down. It's not just a bottom up. It's like something in between, right? Where it needs to be a stretch. And this is kind of like why you have the 15% cushions, which is, I mentioned that. But you need to be able to mold this out in a way that it can be achievable. And for the most part, it hasn't been achievable and creates this like negative morale, people leaving and not achieving the same goals. The next one here is to set your I call it FY26, but it should have been FY25. Sorry. Set the AR by departments. Really like tie those to the departments. What are they responsible for? All of these three teams have to have an ARR being tied to. That's their success. You can have sub KRs, but like how much do they need to achieve? Make sure like all of those teams have one. And the last piece is the KRs by departments. Just again, based on best practices, don't go over 5. Most companies that I've seen have way more than 5. They have like a dozen. Just don't have that. Just keep 3 to 5. But 3 to 5 that actually, again, like are going to drive the improvement in your revenue team. So like here we talk about conversions. Conversion is a very big one from the sales team, like being able to like just this example of like increase conversion from 20 to 25%. That's a lot. Again, that's an example. If you believe you can do it, yes. I've done a lot of different motions, and I think on the SMB, it's a little easier to drive the conversions because you have a lot of like more volume, and you can, from a revenue operation at least, you can actually like bring a lot of like tools into the sales process, where essentially like the AEs or the SDRs are not doing much, and the whole thing is like moving along. It's a little harder for enterprise. I think enterprise is more around like what I talked about earlier. It's like as long as you have this entry criteria from like stage 1 to stage 2 as an SQO, that's kind of like how you can drive opportunities. So like really bringing like quality over quantity of those SQL. And then I've added a couple more here around like marketing. What is your goal? Like we want to improve lead score from 65 to 70. Like what analysis have you done? Like where are they coming from? What is kind of like, how do you reverse engineering around like how to get to them? Which channels are the most successful to get to 70, right? Usually there's a high correlation between lead score and close one. So that's something to pay attention to. And the last piece, which is, I think this one is an easy one, right? It's like customer success. Like how do you like reduce churn? Those are like big KRs. And I think like each team should have like some sort of like, high level KRs. Anything you would like to add, Alexander, to this?
Yeah, what we have seen again, Jeremy, is a lot of these goals are very fluffy, and we have seen like 60-70% of the CROs are pressured to get these goals achieved, right? And it is tremendous pressure with less resources to get these things done. So yeah, setting at the right goal with the right metrics, with the right data points, with the experience, we've seen other companies working would, set you guys, communicate better with the stakeholders across the board, whether it's finance or CEO or the board, right? Sometimes I've seen board members throwing some numbers, can you achieve that? Oh, you can cut some costs in your, operating side. Oh, why can't you deploy an AI tool? And, what you guys are doing, right? So they don't know the reality, and they can throw the numbers, but we have to go as operators, we have to go with data, and we have to go with some realistic numbers, and that's where you can take the pressure off of the table. I think that's what I just want to add it to this deck as well. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah.
So now that we've kind of built our forecast, we have our goals for like next year. It's time to kind of put the team together. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this. I think this is more of a kind of like, for the audience, more of a guiding principles when you kind of build the team. There is no SMB in this. It was kind of like more like mid-market to enterprise strategic, but something for you to think about, right? Like when you start assigning those accounts, right? Like this is the time, November, December, where there's like the new like account management, where you make sure like all of the accounts are being assigned to the right sellers. Just keep in mind, kind of like from a capacity standpoint, what that means. So I've added some numbers there around like mid-market, how many accounts can be tied to each seller, same thing for enterprise and strategic. Another thing here that is not mentioned is really thinking about depending on your strategy, right? Like if you're doing more like kind of like account-based strategy, to think about who are the ultimate parents and the subsidiaries. So you can start like, for example, like strategic, Alexander may own like 5 to 10 strategic, let's say 10. Those are probably like the ultimate parents. So then does your CRM actually ties all of the subsidiaries to those 10 ultimate parents? That's a foundation piece, right? Like where are those things coming from? Like how do you enrich that? How do you make sure that you have full visibility around ultimate parents and subsidiaries? Because you don't want to be in a position where, let's say Alexander owns like ultimate parents being Amazon, and then Jeremy goes out and start working with Whole Food as a subsidiary. Right? We don't want to be in that position, right? So that should be under like Alexander. So like all of those things, again, that's an infrastructure standpoint, but something for you guys to think about. Then the next piece is, again, industry verticals. Depending on how large your team is, you may want to be very specific. Again, this is usually when you have at least a dozen sellers, you start really kind of digging into like industry and verticals. So it could be that Alexander owns like all the tech verticals and Jeremy owns like all the kind of banking verticals, and that's kind of the skill sets there. Another one is like the white space. So think about like their kind of book of business. Usually we recommend like 10 to 15x of white space. So it's really based also on your win rate. So I just added like an example here where the win rate for, let's say, on a 1 million quota is like 10%. So anything like that is kind of qualified as an opportunity through like all the stages, like 10%. That means that this person should always, throughout the year, have an open book of business of like 10 million. If that person wants to hit the goal. So you could obviously add like more cushion to it and get to like 15 million. Then there is the pipeline breakage. Maybe some of you are going through this right now. So what does it mean is, as you start shuffling accounts around, you just have to be mindful around like which accounts. I call it like, I should have kind of stated it here, but it's kind of the art and the science when it comes to pipeline breakage. It's kind of like we call it like kind of like an 80-20. We try to do the math, but there is like the art to it. So if Alexander has Amazon or a subsidiary of Amazon in a certain stage, right? Like we may not want to move that to another seller. Another one is to limit the breakage, right? Because that could be also like a morale issues. So you want to limit kind of the breakage to like 50% was probably high, but maybe in the 30-40%, because they've worked with those clients. But change can be also good, right? Maybe if they haven't had any activities with those accounts for 3 to 6 months, there'd be no reason to like continue to kind of change that. And I actually talked about the account migration, which was like the ultimate parent and subsidiary. Very important to kind of, again, like set the infrastructure in the CRM, make sure your reps are set up, they have visibility around their pipeline, they know how to go to them, right? Because they are being enriched. And also think about like what information you need. I'm going a little deeper here, but what information is relevant to the business, right? Like there's a lot of like kind of what they call like signals these days, right? Like what signals are important to then be captured in the CRM, and then RevOps can actually build some workflows around it every time it happens. It doesn't have to be an email, but it could be just like some sort of like setup where the rep is alerted that maybe someone moved from one company to another and we should reach out to them, right? So I think that's it on that slide. Alexander, anything else you wanted to add?
I think it's pretty, covered very well. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay, cool. All right, so I think we have 2 more slides, and we have like 5+ minutes before the Q&A. So, sales incentive plans or compensation. I usually kind of break it down into 2 pieces, which is like the comp design and the quota settings. So here we're just like more like giving you like a kind of similar like guiding principles, but that's the guiding principles we always use with our clients. So one thing is what I've talked about earlier is CROs are really into growing fast, right? We want to grow faster, right? That also comes with what we call like sales productivity. Are you growing fast with a sales productivity that is suboptimal? So for example, right now, what we're saying is an A should always be between the 4 to 5. Anything below 4, you're essentially overpaying. Anything above 5, you're in a great position, and you can grow much faster. So this example here, and everyone's probably like familiar with what sales productivity is, but if your AE as a 200K OTE, and the split is 50% salary, 50% commission, and the quota is $1 million. That's a 5-to-1. 200K, is $1 million quota. 5-to-1. That usually also translates to what we call like a base commission rate, BCR, of 10%. 10% is the norm for A's. Enterprise, strategic, that's kind of what we see. Mid-market, you may want to see like kind of closer to 4x. See like probably closer to like the 800K quota, but for like a AE, like a 5 times productivity is really good.
That's an average, right? That's an average. So there are some AEs who can hit 7x, but some AEs who can hit 4x or 3x, right? 3.5. So it's an average that we are looking at, But again, that's the C level or leaders' role to see, who is the highest performing and how to, make sure that the compensation is tight as well. So.
Yeah, and I think that's an easy flag for us. Like when we come in and we look and we do the assessment and we look at the self productivity and we see like it's below 4, that's a red flag.
Right.
That means like the company is overpaying. And what I would recommend if it's under 4 is to really think about like not rebuilding the foundation, but really thinking about like how is RevOps like helping me maximize the productivity? Because it's going to be very painful to grow by hiring way more A's when you're like at the 3 and you're overpaying, and it's may just do like 2x, and it's just like you're just paying their salary, and what's the churn after that? Like, it's just not worth it. But revenue operation can really help around there's so many parts that you can maximize productivity, not just from like their day-to-day, but also like the tools and the outreach, and also the coaching that you see like through Gong and so on. There's many different paths, but you really want to be, again, as a guideline, as a sales team. Again, like as Alexander mentioned, there's going to be some rock stars that are like a 7-8x, great, right? But if you set your goal as 5x for your team, that's good. That's not usually what we see, and that's what we wanted to point out. So we talked about the 5x kind of like as a baseline. I've talked earlier on like AEs kind of like doing kind of like so many different things. We here in this case, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but we want like CS to actually focus on renewal and expansion. CS is a very interesting team, especially over the past couple of years, with new business being so hard to get and how expensive it is to build like kind of a new business channel. That there's been a lot of efforts pushed to like post sale. Not just from a retention, but from an expansion standpoint as well. So like having kind of like almost the CS team shifting from CS to kind of like account managers and account directors that have kind of like sales skill sets. I want to bring it up because there's many ways you can incentivize them, either through the NRR, which is a combination of like renewal and expansion, or you can actually split these two. I like to split these two if the churn is very healthy. If the churn is really healthy, why kind of paying too much on the churn, right? Can pay them, right? Maybe 20 or 30% of their commission, but why paying them more than that? And then really going hard on the expansion and paying them the same way you would pay A's on new business, kind of closer to 10% commission rate. All right, so really quickly, OT breakdown. Again, no surprises there. A's should be 50-50. What I mean 50-50 is what I said earlier, 200K, 50% salary, 50% commission. SDR, BDR, 70-30. Their case really can be 60-40, but again, it's a new role, so like really keep it at 70-30. They need more cash. They're essentially like coming out of college, so you don't want to have too much commission there. CF, yes, 60-40. I think I was 60-40, and then when you have like kind of like AM account manager, I'm sorry, and account directors, like almost close as A's because they're selling. So again, within 10%, I think it's fine to kind of move things around. But the one thing I would not change is A's at 50-50. It's kind of like common practice. The last one here is the quota setting. As you said, your quota. One of the things that we look at is you want, again, it's part of the morale, right? You want at least half of your team to achieve 100%. That's a good sign. And you want 80% of your team to achieve, I think, 80%. Those are really two great indicators. And I think I stole this model from like Uber like did it like a few years ago, and I thought that was really good. And I've implemented this at pretty much like all of the companies that we work with. What else? Distribution, okay, yeah, to ensure the morale. And then the last one here is the 15%, which I touched on some of the slides. So 15% cushion. What does it mean is if the board of directors or the CFO is coming to you and company goals are 10 million, then the 15% cushion would be on sales, and then the sales goals would be 11.5. I would not recommend to go anywhere above 15% because then it's deemed as unattainable. And that's usually what you see around that 30% increase that I mentioned earlier in the slides, where no one is hitting the goals, it's unattainable, morale goes down, attrition, and so on. So really stick with like the 10 to 15%.
Perfect. We have the last slide, right? So proactive insights.
All right, cool. I'll spend a couple minutes there. This is a bonus slide. Like as I mentioned, we've seen like best in class companies use it. It's phenomenal. If you can do it, you never get caught by surprises. It's so true. And leaders hate getting caught by surprise. Like, oh, we're not gonna hit our goals. Why? Right? Like that shouldn't be a surprise. You should know that. But the reason why it's so hard to do is because you need to do all the things that I've mentioned earlier. You need to have your goals for like next year. You need to have your KRs. You need to make sure like there's an alignment across like marketing, sales, and customer success. And then you need to, as Alexander mentioned a few times, you need to have your data and trust your data. And that's not an easy feat, especially when you start doing so many different things and use different systems. Like, do you trust your data? But if you have all of them, then it becomes really interesting because what we've done is you can start setting up like weekly. I call it. Let me see. Correct, weekly pulse. I think I don't know if it's on the site. Weekly pulse, which is like I'm on the sales team. Those are my 5 KRs or 3 KRs. Every week I look at those. And every week I know if it's in the green, the orange, or the red. I don't get caught by surprise, right? By the end of the quarter, like I know if I was able to move the needle or if I wasn't, or if I met my goals or not. So again, it's a muscle, and I think it's a discipline. I think just to touch on this is like a lot of the companies that we work with, no fault on their own, right? But there's a lot of like different directions that they take. But again, like it's great to have a lot of ideas, but just be able to say no, I think tells you a lot about a leader, because there's always going to be a shiny object. But if you don't go deep enough, you won't know if it's working or not. And I think that's important. The reason for this is because you don't have time to track, right? If you have a life cycle of 6 to 9 months, like how do you know if it's going to work, right? So just really stick with your KR for the quarter, put things in the back burner, and track those every week. If you don't want to track those every week, track those on a bi-weekly. Don't get caught by surprise. And by sticking with those KRs, you also have a strong conviction around like how you want to drive your business, because those KRs were very thoughtful. When you set them up, you knew that those were the 3 or 5 biggest lever that will help you grow your business. And that's why a lot of the companies don't have the 3 or 5. They have like a dozen KRs. Because at the end of the day, they don't really know what's going to move it the most, right? But the ones that have conviction, we'll stick with 3 to 5 because you can't have more than 5. You get stretched too thin and you just won't be able to execute. And based on that, you can learn from it. And what's interesting about that, and I'll stop there, is that the companies that do that and track those for the quarter and think about the chaos of the following quarter, most of the time, they stick with the same chaos and they want to get better at it, right? Because they were very diligent around picking them. So hopefully this was helpful to everyone and to set you up for success for 2025.
Thank you, Jeremy. I have a few questions that we gathered during our interview with CROs. So one of the questions they were asking us is in terms of what are the mechanisms or what are the ways to find blind spots in your revenue engine, and how do you incorporate AI tools in the process to find revenue leaking blind spots? So I think I'll take that answer. I'll answer that question. So the way I look at blind spots, or we have to look at the process. So we have to look at end-to-end customer journey and what are the touch points. And it's a constant, continuous operation, or the way you have to look at these processes in a frequency, like every week or every month, you have to look at it. So some of them you can have AI tools to take a look at it and get some signals in terms of breakage. But right now there are no tools available in the market to look at end-to-end process journey. So there is still human-led, AI-assisted kind of a framework right now. In the future, it will be AI-led, human-assisted way to find the blind spots. And there are thousands of signals that they look at, and we are not there yet. So one of my goal or our vision, OperateWise, is to build these capabilities and provide those capabilities to our accounts as a free tool, so that they get value with engaging with us. So that's something that we are designing and working on it. So it will plug and play in your tech stack and look for the signals, but AI led, but human assisted. So it will bring this load of the workload and free up the bandwidth. And as I mentioned, there are 25, 30 different jobs that needs to get done every week. Some of them are every day, to make sure that your revenue engine is running smooth. So that's the vision that we have also. So not now, we are not there yet. But if you look at your tech stack right now, your dialing system or phone system, your CRM, your document management system, your payment processing, all those tech stacks, they are getting intelligence. They are adding more capabilities. Some of them are overlapping. So there are a few things that we can leverage at this point in time, but in the future, all these systems are going to be more intelligent, and it's going to help drive efficiency. But bottom line, yeah, are you improving your P&L, right? Are you improving your EBITDA? Are your more sales and less operating costs? That's what you have to look at from an AI adoption, right? So that's where our focus is also. What is that brings the more money into your P&L, right? So EBITDA. So the next one I have, Jeremy, is in terms of uh, sales, marketing, customer support, product alignment. Can you share specific examples of framework that OperateWise uses to detect and address these blind spots quickly?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that we look at is there's always kind of like pointing fingers. It's always kind of like the case between the teams, right? Like it's like marketing is saying they're doing a great job, but like sales is complaining because the leads are not so good. And then marketing is like, but you don't even reach out to them, right? So one of the things that we look at is, for example, like if marketing sends like MQL, is especially the SMB is like super important. It's like how fast do sales get back to them, right? And there are times where it can take days, right? Like still in this world, like inbound leads can take days to hear back from us, right? Like that's insane. Like they're already done. So that's why marketing is frustrating. It's like, hey, I'm driving all of this to you, and you guys are not paying attention. That's also kind of like where RevOps come in, because we built those workflow where reps don't have to do anything. Like in the past, and still like so many companies are doing it. I don't know what the ratio is, but my guess is like over 50%. A lead comes in, they fill out a form, and press send, and nothing else happens. Then maybe 15, 20 minutes later, they're going to receive an automated email from a salesperson based on the internal routing. But then the salesperson has to reach out if the person doesn't book a meeting on that email. So very convoluted, right? But now there's so many tools that allows you, every time they fill out a form, to actually see who is the rep assigned to me and when to book a meeting. So that's kind of like a submission to booking meeting goes much, right? It's fast. And so that's the type of things that we work on. The other one that we see a lot is kind of like sales to customer success. It's like sales is winning, but customer success is not winning, right? So really thinking about like the type of leads that are coming in, right? Like what's the lead score, and it also has to do with kind of the overall strategy of the business, right? Like we want to drive 10 million in ARR this year, great. But if the churn is 50%, what's the point? Right? Like you really want to drive like high quality into your funnel, because the acquisition channel, the pre-sale, is the most expensive of your business by far. Like it's gonna cost you like essentially like your operating cost is gonna be less. You bring 10, 5 million is gonna go out, right? So you don't want that 5 million to go out again next year, because now you're flat. You didn't make any money. So very important to kind of think about that alignment around the customers that are coming in that are the right fit for the business, because you want to have this like handoff with the customer success account managers where they're like, oh, this is the right fit, and this client's going to stay with us for as long as possible. So that's the type of things that we look at.
Nice. There's the next question I have is in terms of change management, how do we roll out the new features of AI or enablement in terms of customers, right? Sorry, enablement aspect for sales and operations team. So I'll take that. Traditionally, there are frameworks and best practices in terms of how to implement change management across the cross-functional teams, right? So there are tools and there are platforms, and also to make sure that we set the expectation and make sure that there are data points that show them there are some wins. So we need to do some kind of data collection or a pilot initiative to make sure that whatever we roll out in AI or new things that we want to sell, or make bring that improvement into the process. So we do that upfront, and we have to roll it out, in an agile, lean, agile, iterative format. So enablement is another aspect. We work with the teams to make sure that they see the data points and want to make sure that they buy in, right? Some of them are in my, one of my example, there are people who don't want to change their seat too, right? If during the office move, they don't want even to change their seat. So they are still tied to some of their processes and the way they do things, right? So some of them are early adopters. So they are jumping onto things, they can do it fast. But we need to use the existing talent, existing resources to make sure that it is working and they are benefiting it. And if they see win, I would say 80% will join them, very fast. There will be some laggers, definitely. That's something management team needs to work on. But we use same framework, like a lot of good best practices that we roll out. And what we have seen is CROs, they are strategic. They need to be strategic, and they need to think. They have to handle the top, right? The CEOs and the board, and also needs to make sure that they are running the shop end to end. Looking at every aspect, but they cannot be operators. So one of the things that the success for a CRO is having a great revenue operations partner within the team, or firms like us can come and partner with you and give that insights, and see around the corner and get you the things done very fast, right? And work with the team. So you need to have that skill set and experience to do that. So definitely, that's a good question. There's a lot of changes happening, and how do we implement it, right? Without creating a lot of noise in the system. So that's the way I would like to take that answer. The question, right? Um, One of the last questions we have is, as we scale, ensuring consistent and predictable growth has been a struggle, especially with fragmented tools and processes. How does OperateWise approach integrating and optimizing disparate systems to build a scalable revenue engine while maintaining efficiency? So, Jeremy, you want to take that question?
Sure, not an easy one. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard as you scale. It's like you have kind of like what we call like the tech debt more and more, right? Like sales used to own kind of like RevOps in a way, or like sales ops, and now the sales is kind of all over. And then you realize the tools are maybe like not the best based on your new motion, but you still like get by. So the way we can like achieve this is obviously like we've seen so many tools that we can like look into your motion, right? Like kind of like it's the whole like holistic, right? Like what are you doing? Are you doing it? What are the reps doing on a daily basis? And just like trying to make sure that those are the right tools for your team, and you're also like not overpaying for some of those tools, for example. So I think again, it's like experience tells us like what works and what doesn't work. So we're able to kind of like easily see, an example of this is like some companies use HubSpot and Salesforce. Like I don't understand why. Like marketing in Salesforce, sure, right? You need like a marketing engine at the top in Salesforce, but why HubSpot and Salesforce? HubSpot can do both. You may as well just use HubSpot and do really well with HubSpot. That's just an example. But like spreading a CRM is a lot of work. So that's rare that we do it, unless there is like kind of like a big business decision that needs to happen. But yeah, like I think the experience just going through this, the tech debt, and again ensuring that you have that 4 to 5x productivity that will help you grow the business. So yeah, that's obviously that requires a lot more like assessment.
Yeah, definitely. Please contact us if you have any question. We would love to share our knowledge and see if we can help you guys.